Modernization of agriculture is crucial to the growing population of the world. In many countries, either the land or the climate isn't suiting the demands of traditional agriculture. To fix this, it requires disruptive innovation. Osram is one of the companies working in this space. My guest today is working from Osram as the global product manager. He is helping making agriculture more sustainable with various lighting solutions. So let's hear more from him. Please welcome Mr. Renil. Hello and welcome to A Walk Down Memory Lane. I'm Pranjal Malik, a full-time high school student. In the series, I'm speaking to successful individuals from various fields to learn from their experiences. I believe everyone can learn something from their journey, so let us take this walk together. How would you describe yourself as a student?
As a student, I think I evolved as a student from different facets. Primary school, very interested to go meet friends and super honed in on being the top of the school class, just like typical Indian norm, I would say, in South India. More in higher secondary school, less emphasis on academics, but more towards being one with friends, etc. But towards when you get closer to getting into, they say +1, +2, things got really competitive because that's where you separate from the rest. And the ambition was always in the head to, ironically, leave the country to the west and find something that's better there. So that's where I steered more towards being heavily more academic.
So were you more focused on, in secondary school, were you more focused on academics or sports or any other extracurricular activities?
Luckily for me, I'm not very athletically gifted, so it wasn't a difficult choice to make. Very, very heavily focused on academics. Anything outside from the typical school curriculum, it would mainly be quiz, competing on other cultural activities, charades or stuff like that. What's the good word? I'm not sure if this is very prominent now. So pushing the limits of vocabulary and stuff like that, but athletically, almost non-existent, I would say.
Any tips that you would suggest or give other students who are in primary or secondary school today?
Primary or secondary school today? I think now if I look around, the available resources are very high. So there's not a moment in the day where you can stop learning.
Yeah.
Right? So we had that luxury. Say, I'm done with my books, I'm done with my chapters, I got nothing more to study. Nowadays, kids don't have that luxury. There's always something you could turn on your screen or a device and start learning new. Get out more, get some sun, is what I would say. Find a balance, nurture real friendships, and very, very tough to implement, but reduce device and screen time, and just be out there because the world is also constantly changing.
So how would you describe your overall school experience as a whole, from primary to all the way to secondary school?
I mean, you go to international schools, right?
Yes.
Which I feel is substantially gives you a leg up on a vast majority of students globally. What differentiates you is when you go from different international schools also, you're forced to change.
Yeah.
Make new friends, adapt to new place, etc. I studied for until I think first grade till 10th grade in the same school.
Oh.
So a lot of inertia built in and not really prepared to embrace or accept change or handle change. So when I was forced to change to a different school, because it was much better and I was lucky enough to get in, it was tough.
Of course, yeah.
So managing change, able to adapt change is very important.
Was the change between different school boards or systems, or was it the same system?
It was the same system, but the new school was much more competitive, much more high profile. And it was strangely, it had like a university culture. In university you would see like, or Harvard and other stuff, you can get in if your brother or your dad went to school there.
Yeah.
This school had that kind of a legacy. They were like all the alumni were already in Europe or US studying here and there. So the kids were primed to that path, almost predefined, I would say. So the environment was very different versus my previous school, which was do the best you can and let's see what happens.
So you completed secondary school and moved on to university. Which university did you attend?
The university was University of Madras, and the college specifically was St. Joseph's, and St. Joseph's College of Technology. And I did electronics and electrical engineering. I had a choice either to go medical route or engineering route. Those are my two abundant options that I had. I spoke with other university students at that time, and a majority of them, whom I aligned with from a wavelength standpoint, said to stay away from medicine. I think medical field is something very challenging because you have to disconnect yourself emotionally also to be able to be effective at that, and that's not something that I could do. So I chose technology.
So when you were attending university, was university everything you expected it to be from all the TV and movies?
No, none whatsoever. In fact, I knew going into that university, every university has a reputation and what they're known for. There are quite a bit of fun universities in Madras, Chennai, where I studied. But at that age, your parents have a very strong say in where you go. And I was strongly persuaded to go this university route, I would say. And it was all about academics, academics. It was pretty much like an extension of school, I would say. I wouldn't even call it a college. And it was very academically focused. But your experience is revolves around your friends, right? So I had a good texture there, so that was good for me.
So if it was an extension of normal school, would you say it was harder or easier to adapt from secondary school to in university?
It was harder, I would say, because you build this perception in your head about college, or what it is, what it would be, and a degree of freedom which you would gain, which you didn't have in schooling, and all of that was taken away. Was not available. So psychologically, for me, I was not prepared. Let's say, but like maybe that was a change which I needed. Not being able to adapt to any change for 10 years, and suddenly this was a bigger change to adapt to, which made it more difficult.
After completing university, you went abroad to study in the US. How was your experience there? And was it your first time going out of the country?
Was it my first time out of the country? I think it was. Yeah. My parents traveled once in a while to Singapore and Dubai and here and there. But like the brat that I was, I wanted the house for myself so that I can have parties with my friends. So I always chose to stay back, giving the excuse that I had studied. So yes, it was the first time I left the country, and it was very, very, very difficult because that was nothing like what they show in the movies.
Movies or TV.
What they show about America and what it is, it was nothing like it. And with no experience of studying in a boarding school or living in a hostel, going directly into a grad apartment housing was very difficult.
How did you adapt to these drastic changes?
I would say tough love. Luckily, this is what I would say to everybody who goes abroad. Your roommates are your most valuable assets. So my university and college friends who went abroad, they would always hang up and say, hey, you and I, we go to the same apartment. We stick together, we hang out together. I took a completely different route. I wanted to be with strangers, not the same new things, because I could leverage on their experience.
Yeah.
Because if you go in new, you and your roommate could make the same newbie mistakes, but then I picked a room which had a PhD student, 2 PhD students, 2 master's students, and I was the 5th one. So that really helped accelerate my learning curve.
Did you achieve your career aspirations after college? Did you become what you wanted to become?
Yes, I would say most definitely yes. Yeah, I think I have achieved what I wanted as a kid, and a little more than I expected to, because now when I look at the experience and where I am and how I've gone through, yes, definitely.
What was your career aspiration?
It was pretty simple, I would say. As a kid, growing up from a middle-class Indian family, the career aspirations were very simple. A good job and out of the country. You know, some big metropolis, very successful job, high-rise building. These were the dreams as a kid, you know, and being able to go through those and make choices which I made during my life. And yeah, it was pretty simple. Rich and big city out of the country.
Did you have any setbacks in college and university?
Yes, and something that I could not handle pretty well either. So, in India, good academic record. In school, and even in the new school, good academic record. In the college, good academic record. You know, best student and all that. So, the expectation is I go to the university in the US, I didn't have funding. So I said, okay, funding is tough. I got to go there, prove myself, and get my funding.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it even after going there.
Wow.
And that was a huge setback for me because A, not financially prepared to handle that additional 3 semesters. And that was my first failure, I would say, you know, in academics life. And getting into realization that you're not as good. And the professor saying there are like 6 more kids who are better than you, and they deserve the funding. That was a huge setback because it was not just like bad grades, let's get moving, but it was like not enough. Now you need to figure out a way to, you know, finish your degree. So that was tough.
How did you overcome the setback or failure?
The most reliable backup, you know, your parents. So of course, not planned, but my dad stepped in and he just paid through the whole thing so we had to like go out of pocket versus the original plan of scholarship.
Yeah.
And which took some pressure out, but at the same time, you know, you kind of feel responsible for what this was because you say something would happen and you didn't deliver. So there was an added pressure of finding a job soon and kind of not exactly repay it, but kind of make things even a little bit. And that was very tough because my field was power electronics, and jobs are very minimal. Mechanical and or IT and all that were abundant, but electronics was tough.
So you do get past this and complete your university, and you go into your first job 15 years ago, which was an internship for Osram. How did the internship go?
My first internship, this is fantastic. It was a typical work schedule, very far away from the university, so I had to like drive around 1 hour to get there. But it was a lot of free time because everybody there were doing their own thing, and it was up to you to go and look at what they're doing and find out, etc. But there's a huge level of intimidation because these are like experienced veterans. You don't know what to ask.
Yeah.
So the difficulty was deciding what to ask, and something like, "What are you doing?" Sounds stupid, right? So it took a while to like observe and see what was going on, and then formulate questions. But then there's always in such workplaces there are like 1 or 2 individuals who are very empathetic.
Yeah.
So they would come to you, they would give you tasks, and then that enabled the questioning and learning curve.
As I mentioned before, 15 years later, you're still working with Osram. So what made you stick with this company?
Pretty much my motto is if you're not feeling the struggle, you're not growing, you know, you're stagnant.
Yeah.
So with Osram, I've been lucky enough to find struggles that are healthy intervals. For 7 years, I was in R&D, designing products for them. And then I made the switch to the commercial side for product marketing and portfolio management, and there was another learning curve there, something completely new. And then international experience, they also enabled me to transfer from Boston to Penang, Malaysia. So every few years, there's a growth pattern, and the company has delivered everything that I wanted.
Was working for a job or Osram as you imagined it when you were a kid, or the job expectations that you had? Did the job meet them?
In the early stages, I would say not so much. That also primarily stems from it wasn't a good fit for me. I'm not a lab rat or very, very good in designing electronics and all that. I lean more towards a little bit more human interaction, a little bit more business side. So once I made the switch, it was fantastic. Every week, every day was good.
What were your main roles in Osram? You worked in R&D and then you worked in commercial, but what did you do basically?
In terms of products specifically, I was lucky enough to see the transition, the traditional lighting.
Yeah.
So I never worked on the traditional lighting. I worked on an induction-based fluorescent light. That was new at that time. And then HID lighting for stadiums and all that. So I got to visit some stadiums there. And then we did the design for an LED driver. That's when I immediately switched to commercial side. And then each day was different because you're going to see different customers, traveling different parts of the US or international travel. So that aspect I liked.
Is it more exciting being on the commercial side or the R&D side?
I would say definitely the commercial side. The benefits, however, of the R&D side is once you're out of the office, nobody can force you to work. There's limited things that you can do without a lab. You're always plugged in on the commercial side, especially now. There's a phone, there's a smartphone to reach you. Yeah. Shutting off work really depends on your superior. If he encourages and enables a healthy work-life balance. If not, I have been under tough bosses. You pretty much work 7 days. You're like a doctor, 7 days a week.
How do you deal with tough bosses?
You make efforts to. You need to find the right moment to, first of all, let them know. Sometimes they don't. You have to let them know what you're going through and what you would like to see change. And in my unfortunate case, that was not enough. He had his personal agenda, so he was gunning for it. So when you see that change cannot be done, it's most healthy for you to accept that. Because the longer you fight it, the more frustrating it gets for you. So you accept it and you tune accordingly. You either get tougher, get better, or you plan your exit into a different group or a different function within the company. Because only you would know what's sustainable, and that's important.
Okay. So fast forward to today, how do your products help improve agriculture or change the traditional ways of agriculture?
Most of the acceleration, I would say, did not come by choice. It came by the pandemic. Quite a bit of normal modes of food supply was, say in the US, right? Most fruits are grown in Mexico or in southern countries, and they're transported semi-ripe. Yeah. So they ripen in the truck while on the 1 week journey. So there's a term called farm to fork. So the farm to fork distance was extremely high. And now with LED lighting from Osram, you could have vertical farms built within like a very close proximity of a very busy metropolis, or greenhouses that needs a little bit more space, built 10, 20 miles out, not too far out. And both of these really enable consumers to get fresh products that like the way they're supposed to be consumed. And there's a little bit of humans playing God also here, because they try to tweak the flavor, enhance the chemical aspect of it to tweak it, which I think is good. It gives flexibility, but the power of LEDs are being unlocked for specific different crops, and it's awesome.
How was your career journey through Osram currently? Did you have any trying times? And if so, how did you deal with them?
My most trying time came here in Penang. So it was a huge change. It was a huge change, selling the house, asking my wife to resign from her job, and we moved everything, lock, stock, barrel, here to Penang, Malaysia. Unlike if I had done a job change in the US, it didn't work out, I'd say, it didn't work out, let's try something else. Yeah. Here, if it didn't work out, making a switch back or going back was not easy. Yes, it could have been done, but that's not a choice I would have done either, because the reason I came here, 90% was for family reasons. I want to be closer to India to visit my parents. And 10% was international experience, fantastic, you know. But at that time, I was like, it's international experience in Asia. I'm Asian Indian. There's nothing more to learn, but it was incredible, the stuff that I learned and adapting here.
You have lived in many countries. How was the experience in each of the different countries, and what changed dramatically from each country you traveled to?
For people who are aspiring to live in different countries, I would say jump on it. You know, it will not be easy, but you don't want it to be easy. Also, you want an interesting story, you know, for your kids and your grandkids to say, and it really enriches you as a person. The only thing I would say is pick a country that speaks your language, which you're familiar with, because if you don't speak the language, it can get astronomically difficult. I have been lucky wherever I've gone, people speak good English, or I'm able to communicate in their language, so that makes a huge difference. What's the word? Phasing in.
Yeah. So your job is quite demanding in Osram. How did you maintain a healthy balance, like you mentioned earlier, in your life, between work and personal life?
We have a family friend, a super, super prominent doctor who's a neighbor in India, who took care of my mom also. So he gave me very valuable advice, which helped maintain the balance. He said, be satisfied with imperfection. Don't gun for perfection. And this is not a motto I have lived for. He said, don't try to be a perfect product manager. Don't try to be a perfect husband. Don't try to be a perfect son. Accept that level of imperfection. And that, when you take that off from everything that you're doing, you know, as a son, as a husband, as an employee, it really helps you to temper down your stress levels, and when you accept that, your outlook for your day, your life, it improves, and other things, timing opens up for other things. So that helps.
You had a great journey starting from South India to USA and then finally getting the title currently of Global Product Manager. In this time of rapid growth, did you ever experience the imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. When I came to Penang, yes, because at that time the position I was going for was a normal mid-level position, but after the interview, the VPs here felt I could handle more, and they gave me a better opportunity. And in Asia, everybody talks, right? So when I come here, I go out, and this is in the reviews. There's something called 360 review. Are you familiar with this term, 360 review?
No.
So usually in a company, you do reviews. The boss reviews the subordinate end of every year. In a 360 review, your boss reviews you, and your subordinates also review you. So it's a full round review. And in that review, there was it's anonymous. So one or two of them said he doesn't deserve to be here.
Yeah.
That's when I think, why does someone feel like this? Because I don't. No, I'm delivering everything. So it came externally, and people are people, and I value the voice in my head more than the external. So it was a momentary imposter syndrome, I would say, but then not lingering.
So I know you have various hobbies like rock climbing, cocktail mixology, playing the guitar. With a demanding job like you're currently, how do you keep up with these hobbies?
It's easy, but not the ideal answer. I jump from hobby to hobby, so I go through different phases. But when I find something new, I latch onto it, and that's what happened. You know, I got into rock climbing very early, and that's all I did for quite a long time. And again, right, there's a balance that's missing. When you overdo something, you mess things up. And I did that for a very long time, and eventually end up like, you know, your body
Yeah.
takes a hit. So I stopped that. Guitar, I would say, very still beginner level, so not frequently practiced. Maybe that's something I should go back to after this. But it's learning any musical instrument is a must. And I don't have formal training. My training is YouTube training. So I think that's why I started guitar, and I really enjoyed it. Cocktail mixology is something that I'm like aggressively following now. Luckily, it's out of the true, genuine interest and awe for the art.
Yeah.
It's almost like cooking, but at a much minuscule level. So the margin of error is very narrow, and it's amazing what the experts do.
Yeah.
And it's pure art. And luckily, I still follow it for the art and not have 7 cocktails a day. So it's amazing.
So after all your experience working for companies and going through college and school, do you have any advice for students who are in maybe high school or just about to go for college?
Excellent. The one advice I have, which is very tough to follow, I think, is to detach yourself from the devices. There's a lot of peer pressure when you're in high school. Everybody goes through it, and even more so than ever, it's the pressure to be on social media.
Yeah.
All friendship revolves around phones, and even the pandemic, that's the only option you have also. So the advice I would have is be active, not necessarily go to the gym and work out, but just be active. Could be running, could be playing games, whatever. And talking about games, another advice that I would give students is, which I do a lot, is start exploring board games, not your typical ones. Stuff that involves some critical thinking, some strategy, and it's really enriching experience because you're off from your device. You're still not bored. It's exciting, and it's a lot of fun if you're into it.
If you had a time machine and you could go back to any moment in your life, where would you go?
I would go back to, high school-ish. High school-ish, when your body starts transforming, that stage, because physical fitness is something that I completely ignored for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So what my friends from the US told me is they target that puberty time to get into fitness because your body is transforming. So any workout or anything you do, the gains are astronomically more than if you do it at a different time in your life. So the focus was heavily on academics and books, and not a healthy mix. So I would go back to that stage, work on my body, because whatever you build up in your younger years, that retains kind of like a footprint in your body. So anytime you say you take a break for a year or two and you go back to it, the body recovers back to that stage.
Yeah.
People call it muscle memory, but it's beyond muscle memory. So yeah, time machine, go back to my teens, be more fit, which would have proliferating impact throughout my life.
And our final question for the day, how much of your percentage would you give to luck in your career? And how much percentage would you say is hard work and skill?
I would say, they say, right, fortune favors the brave. I would say 75%. I have to tone it down. I would say 65% is hard luck and hard work and effort, and definitely luck also. Because I look at it like, if you put a lot of effort, say you live 100 years, you put a lot of effort in first 10 years, 20 years, your effort to reward will not match at that time. You put 90% effort, but then the outcome is only like 50%, and you're like, I put so much effort.
Yeah.
Why is it so bad? But no, I think it's a cumulative thing. And later in your stage, you might put only 50%, but the outcome is 100.
Yeah.
And you're pleasantly surprised. And I believe there's a balance everywhere. So you were kind of shorted by life in one stage, but then in a later stage, it's kind of compensated. The universe and the cosmos kind of compensate for things.
Right.
So your birth till your last breath, I think your effort to outcome will match perfectly.
Right.
But it could come in like asymmetric waves. That's how I feel like.
It's very interesting. Thank you for your time today, and I hope I'll get to talk to you again.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.